the chair will collapse. Because we win topicality, the whole case falls. No, don't do that. All right. I always like to give a few rules of thumb. Don't do analogies about your siblings. Okay. Don't do analogies about food in general. Okay. Those are the ones and usually not animals either. Okay. Anytime people are like, Russia is like a bear and we are going to anger them. No, just stay away from those. So here's some examples of how you can do kind of a more muted version of a metaphor, and it still doesn't take away from your credibility. Winston Churchill used the metaphor of an iron curtain. This is a metaphor because there was not literally a wall of iron coming across, all right? But it was a metaphor, and it made a picture stick in your judge's mind if you use a phrase like this. So here's a few more examples. We're going to be talking, if you are in NCFCA, I believe it's Middle East policy, right? We're talking about Middle East policy this year. Then you're probably going to be sanctions, and here's one of my favorite authors about sanctions is Elliott Abrams, and he talks about sanctions and he references them as a tool, and then he also talks about policymakers having a quiver. So both of those words are creating a picture in your mind when he says that. So he's saying you're going to take away a tool from our policymakers. So you're picturing a toolbox and a tool is taken away. That's just another way to make your argument more visual and more memorable for your judge. And all right, and then we have my favorite figure of speech. I like zeugmas a lot, but these are even cooler, in my opinion, because they're so easy to do. So this is called a snow clone. And basically you take a well-known phrase, and then you switch out some of the words. So there's a few examples in the next thing. So if you've all heard, gray is the new black, or whatever is the new black. You could say cyber warfare is the new infantry. Or you could say, instead of what would Jesus do, you could say, what would Henry Kissinger do? Or what would Putin do? Those are some phrases that you can easily just take that, oh, I know that phrase, and just substitute a few words and make it apply to your case. All of those make your arguments a lot more memorable in the judge's mind, as opposed to just saying, not a significant plan, not a significant problem. It's way more memorable if you use one of those. All right, so here, if you can read it, it says coffee, it's what's for breakfast. I don't know if you guys remember the beef. It's what's for dinner tonight. Da da da. Oh, you guys are probably too young. Anyway, that was back in the day. But those are really fun. All right, and the last way to be memorable is to be unexpected. Now, this doesn't mean you come in the room with a song and dance routine or something crazy like that. Okay, it just means that if you have an interesting fact in your case, you don't bury that in your speech. You use that first, because as soon as you tell the judge something that they didn't think before, or something that they haven't heard that particular take on it, you're going to all of a sudden have their attention. So here's an example, and this is talking about the United Nations. Let's say you're trying to convince the judge that the United Nations is a helpful organization. The other team has said all they do is talk and they don't do anything real, and it's just a waste of time. We need to stop dealing with the UN. So your argument could look like this. Oh, it's okay. Just go. Okay, this is the second letter in the success that the Heath brothers have in their book, and I'll be talking about this a little bit more in the next lecture. But basically, what these two guys did, Chip and Dan Heath, was they went and they researched the catchiest, or what they call the stickiest ideas in business, in politics, and just even in stories that pass from person to person. And they found some common threads. And they created the acronym SUCCESS of all the factors that these stickiest ideas had in common. So if you just click through them, yeah. So right now we're talking about unexpected, and that's the second one. And we'll talk about the other ones in a bit. All right, so I highly recommend that book if you guys want to read more about this. All right, so the UN helps people is what you're trying to say. So here's one way you could structure that. You could say, many people assume the UN is useless and all talk, no walk, but this isn't correct. And then you talk about the UN supplies refugees with what they need. And then your third point is around 26 million people, mostly women and children, are going to get their daily food from the United Nations. Now, that's an unexpected fact. That's something your judge didn't know before they walked into that round. And so that's what you want to bring up to the front of your argument structure. So if you go to the next thing, you can see you go ahead and make your claim. You want your claim to end up on the judge's flow the same way. But you put that unexpected fact next so that you stick that in the judge's mind. That's just a simple way to use unexpectedness in your favor. So the idea is to stay extraordinary and to not just give another speech list of arguments again. So we're going to go to the next one here. But while Ty's pulling up the one, let's see. It is called Avoid Debate or Speak. Let's see. This is it. See if you can get this. See if you can get that up. But while he's doing that, does anybody have an example of where they maybe used a metaphor or where you used a good intro or conclusion that you remember that making a difference in a round that you did? Anybody? Yeah.
I was going in a case against icebreakers. I was negative and was arguing, saying that we should put icebreakers and point them in the direction of the Arctic, the poles.
Right. Okay.
And I basically compared them to a middle-aged man buying new cars or boats or toys that are very expensive but don't really have any use for them.
Okay, so he's saying he was debating Arctic militarization, where we're putting ice-breaking ships up in the Arctic Circle, where really there's not a lot going on up there, and it's more just kind of a fun thing. He's saying he compared it to a middle-aged man buying the latest toys and gadgets and cars and things. That's a good way of explaining the concept you were trying to get across. That's very very good. Anybody else? Stories? Examples? Who has ever gone against a metaphor that went wrong? Like, have you ever been up there and it's like the analogy battle, and like they get up and they say, your case is like a penguin, it can't fly, and you get up and you're like, oh, well, our penguin has 21st century technology strapped onto it, which is why it's going to succeed, and then they talk about the technology breaking or whatever. All right, yeah, I see lots of hands, yeah.
It was the baby in the bathwater analogy.
Oh.
We started trying to define all the terms in it did not go over well.
Yeah, baby in the bathwater analogy. Probably want to stay clear of that one. Yeah. Yeah.
The government became your parent that loves you a lot and should never have any limitations because that doesn't make any sense. They should go do whatever they protect you.
Yes. So he's Edmund, right? Edmund? Yeah, he's saying people compare the government to your parent. Definitely want to steer clear of that one. Yeah, in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things they compared. It was during Stone's military year, and they compared Afghanistan to an orphaned child, and the U.S. government to like a adopted parent taking it under its
Okay, he says Afghanistan was like the orphaned child, and the United States was that benevolent parent taking it under its wing. Yes, I hate that. In foreign policy, this is one of my pet peeves, when people use the parent-child analogy. That's just so offensive. I can't imagine if someone from Afghanistan happened to be in the room, how would they feel about that? Yeah.
My partner compared the World Health Organization to a lawnmower with
She compared the WHO to a lawnmower with lasers? I'm not getting the connection on that one. Yeah.
I don't think anybody did.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Okay, yeah. Blake.
We once had a round where one team was arguing for abolish, the other team was arguing for reform. The team that was arguing for abolish used the apple analogy to find out the apple's rotten to the core. And then we turned it and said, no, it's on a tree that it's the only rotten apple. You can find other good apples. And they turned it around and said, well, the entire tree is dying. We came back and said, well, you graft on branches.
Oh no. Oh no. See, that's what you don't want to do with an analogy. Blake was talking about an apple, and they said, oh, it's a rotten apple. Oh no, you can pick a fresh apple. Oh no, we can graft on new apple trees to the tree. No, just steer clear of that. If they do a bad analogy, you can dismantle the actual argument and just kind of leave it. Stay above the fray as far as the crazy analogies go. Yeah.
We were against this team. They did the whole donut analogy on us. That one.
I have not heard the donut analogy. To enlighten me.
It's like, their case is like a donut. It looks really nice, but it's really bad for you because it's got a big hole in it.
Oh. Oh no.
My better judgment. Turned it around and said our case is like a salad.
Your case is like, okay, that's funny. That's really funny. Okay. All right, how about two more over here. Yeah.
Okay, this is funny because it was semifinals round at the Minnesota Open this year, and I'm the 2N, but my partner decides to run voters into 1N, and he literally has 3 voting issues where he compares every aspect of Upham's case to polar bears. Literally every
Oh no, 3 voting issues about polar bears.
polar bears, and it was supposed to tie into constituency. I basically got up to my 2N and I was like, well, my partner ran these 3
and how'd that round turn out for you?
We only lost by a ballot, so it wasn't
Okay.
that bad.
Wasn't that bad, but it's one of those you'll remember forever. A bit. Okay, yeah. I don't think election policy is very closely related to polar bears, so that's probably not the best way to explain a case, right? Okay, last one over here, yeah.
I had one person in a round I saw compare voter ID fraud to unicorns, and they got into a whole debate about whether or not unicorns exist in cross-sex, about how it still applied. It's like voter fraud doesn't exist, or yes it does.
Oh no. Okay, so she said she debated against they were talking. She saw the round. They were talking about voter fraud and whether or not it exists, and they compared it to unicorns. And then the debate turned into, do unicorns exist? In the cross-sex. Okay, so that's hilarious. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, it happens. And you're at the table and you're like, oh, this could be really good. But just try to steer clear of it. Stay above it. You guys are better than that. Come up with a JFK figure of speech and stay above that. Okay, all right.
Last one. One judge one time asked us to use as many absurd cucumber metaphors as we could.
What is that? Oh no, he says he had a judge ask them to give as many cucumber references and metaphors as they could, and gave them extra speaker points for doing so. I'm sorry, was that like 10 o'clock at night? And what? Okay, well, you know what? That's about reading your judge, okay? So if your judge says that, I mean, break it out. You got to know your audience. All right, so we're going to go now to some more